Emma, Lily, Mia, and Sarah were inseparable since college. Each year they planned an escape from their chaotic lives, and this winter Sarah suggested something different, a secluded mountain cabin for a snowy retreat. Emma, the cautious one, had her reservations but was overruled by the group's excitement. As they packed up the car, their dynamic was on full display. Sarah's adventurous spirit clashed with Emma's need for control, while Mia, the peacemaker, tried to keep the balance. Lily, ever the skeptic, rolled her eyes at Sarah's enthusiasm. The drive up the mountains was scenic but nerve-wracking. As they climbed higher, the weather turned harsh. Snow fell heavily, and the winding roads became slick. The GPS led them through a dense forest, where towering trees blocked out the fading light. "What's the deal with these signs?" Lily asked, pointing to hand-painted warnings nailed to trees. "Turn back. Beware the frost." Sarah dismissed them as local superstition, but Emma couldn't shake her unease. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun had set, and a snowstorm was brewing. The cabin stood alone in a clearing, surrounded by endless trees. Its wooden frame creaked under the weight of the wind, and the porch light flickered faintly. Inside, the cabin was rustic, with aged furniture, a stone fireplace, and thick curtains that barely kept out the cold. A sense of abandonment lingered in the air. "This place is perfect," Sarah declared, throwing her bag onto the couch. But Emma noticed something strange: the claw marks on the door, the faint smell of decay, and the way the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally in the dim light. As they settled in, the storm intensified. The howling wind masked the creaks of the old cabin, but every so often a sound would rise above it, soft tapping, like fingers against glass. They spent the evening unpacking and cooking dinner. The fireplace cast long shadows, and the girls tried to ignore the occasional flicker of the lights. Over dinner, Sarah brought up local legends she had read online. "This area has a lot of weird stories," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Like this one about the Frost Keeper. Supposedly it's an ancient spirit that roams the mountains during storms." "Let me guess," Lily said, smirking. "It eats people who don't pay attention to stupid signs." "Something like that," Sarah replied. "It uses the cold to trap people, drawing them deeper into the woods until they're lost forever." The conversation made Mia uneasy, but she didn't want to spoil the fun. Instead, she suggested a round of card games. The group laughed and played late into the night, though Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. As they settled in, the storm intensified. The howling wind masked the creaks of the old cabin, but every so often a sound would rise above it, soft tapping, like fingers against glass. They spent the evening unpacking and cooking dinner. The fireplace cast long shadows, and the girls tried to ignore the occasional flicker of the lights. Over dinner, Sarah brought up local legends she had read online. "This area has a lot of weird stories," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Like this one about the Frost Keeper. Supposedly, it's an ancient spirit that roams the mountains during storms." "Let me guess," Lily said, smirking. "It eats people who don't pay attention to stupid signs." "Something like that," Sarah replied. "It uses the cold to trap people, drawing them deeper into the woods until they're lost forever." The conversation made Mia uneasy, but she didn't want to spoil the fun. Instead, she suggested a round of card games. The group laughed and played late into the night, though Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The first incident happened that night. Mia woke to the sound of her name being called, faint and distant, as if carried on the wind. She sat up in bed, her breath visible in the cold air, and listened. The voice came again, closer this time. Heart pounding, she approached the window. Snow swirled outside, obscuring the forest. But there, just beyond the tree line, she saw a figure, a shadow against the white backdrop. Panicked, she woke Sarah, who groggily joined her at the window. By then, the figure was gone. Probably just your imagination, Sarah said, though she couldn't hide her own unease. The next morning the group ventured into the woods to explore. The forest was eerily quiet, the snow muffling their footsteps. They found a frozen stream and spent hours taking photos and laughing. But as they ventured further, the atmosphere grew oppressive. They stumbled upon a strange sight, a ring of animal bones arranged in a perfect circle. The bones were bleached white, standing out starkly against the snow. "What kind of animal does this?" Mia whispered. No one had an answer. They hurried back to the cabin, their earlier excitement replaced by a creeping sense of dread. That afternoon, Sarah discovered an old leather-bound diary tucked inside a drawer. The pages were yellowed, and the handwriting was neat but frantic. The early entries were mundane, describing a family's life in the cabin decades ago. But as Sarah read further, the tone changed. The writer spoke of hearing whispers at night, seeing figures in the woods, and feeling an unnatural cold that no fire could banish. One entry stood out. "It comes with the snow. The Frostkeeper is watching. We can't leave. We can't hide." The girls tried to laugh it off, but the diary's warnings lingered in their minds. That night, the power flickered, and the fireplace extinguished itself, plunging the room into darkness. The girls huddled together as the wind howled outside, louder now, almost like voices. At one point, Emma thought she saw a shadow move across the window, but when she looked closer, it was gone. On the third night, Sarah disappeared. One moment she was in the kitchen making tea, the next she was gone. Her coat and boots remained by the door, but her scarf was missing. The group searched the cabin frantically, calling her name. When they ventured outside, they found her scarf tied to a tree, fluttering in the wind. Her footprints led into the woods but stopped abruptly, as if she had been lifted into the air. "She wouldn't just leave," Mia said, her voice trembling. "Something took her." Emma tried to remain calm, but even she couldn't explain what had happened. That night, the tapping on the windows grew louder, and the whispers turned into muffled voices, calling each girl by name. Lily began to act strangely. She claimed to hear Sarah calling for help and spent hours staring out the window. "She's out there. I can hear her," Lily insisted. Emma and Mia tried to stop her from going outside, but on the fourth night, Lily slipped away while they slept. They found her standing in the woods, motionless, her back to them. When she turned, her eyes were glowing icy blue. "It's so warm here," she whispered before vanishing into the darkness. The Frostkeeper appeared that night, a towering figure cloaked in snow, its face a mask of ice with piercing blue eyes. It loomed outside the cabin, its presence freezing the air. Emma and Mia barricaded the doors, but the entity's power was overwhelming. The walls creaked, the windows cracked, and the temperature plummeted. Emma realized they couldn't both escape. She lured the Frostkeeper away, sacrificing herself so Mia could flee. Mia ran into the storm, the forest warping around her as the snow swallowed her path. Part 7, The Aftermath, 15 minutes. Mia woke in a hospital bed, rescued by a search team who found her half frozen near the edge of the forest. She tried to explain what had happened, but no one believed her. Back at home, Mia found the diary on her bedside table, though she had left it behind. The final entry now read, "It remembers." The story ends with Mia staring at her window, where the Frostkeeper's glowing eyes reflect back at her before the screen fades to black.